This month, our guest is the AD of Long War.
Really, Ray?
I thought you were away.
First of all, how dare you? Second of all, clearly I'm back. You thought you were going to interview the Latin guest? Please. Okay. Oh, hi. Welcome back. It's so good to see you. We are going to be having an artistic director of both the Soul Project and Long War Theater. Bienvenido, Jacob Padrón.
Hey guys, how's it going? Happy to be here.
Jacob Padrón, welcome to Regarding.
Thank you so much for coming to our amazing studio.
Thank you for having me.
Apartment.
This is awesome.
Please tell us about the Soul Project. You're the founder and artistic director.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for having me on the show. It's really fantastic just to be able to be here with you and to be in conversation with both of you. So thanks.
No, thank you. Thank you for
shout out to both of you.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Soul Project is a new theater initiative that I started with 6 other artists. We launched officially in May of 2016, and gosh, 2 years ago. But basically, it's a theater initiative that works in partnership with leading theaters in New York and around the country to amplify the voices of LATINX playwrights and build artistic homes for artists of color. That is what we do. The model, just to share a little bit about how the model works, is that the hope is that we will identify 12 LATINX playwrights, and then we partner each writer to a company who commits to producing their plays. In addition, we ask each company to commission a writer, a Latinx writer for future production, and then also to meet with as many artists of color, directors, designers, dramaturgs, that maybe they don't know. The idea being that we want to really grow the community that these artistic directors and these companies can draw from over an extended period of time. So that is the Soul Project.
I love that. Something that Larissa Fasthorse, I guess, from a couple episodes ago said, when we asked her for some of her recommendations, she said, know your worth. You are making them money. They are making money off of your work. So if they're going to make money off of your work, make sure that you have certain requirements. Like make sure that you have indigenous people at your play,
yes.
Around you, selling like their wares, showing, having other performances and art going on. So I love that you have requirements of you're going to be using this playwright and you're going to be inviting more. I think that's so important to know your worth and know what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. We sort of frame it in the invitation to partner with the Soul Project. We always say it's sort of a 3-pronged commitment that you produce the play in partnership with the Soul Project that's written by a Latinx playwright and has all artists of color on the creative team, including the director, that you commission a writer for future production, and this idea of how do we build a more inclusive community of designers, directors, and artists that the theater can draw from. So that's sort of our 3-prong approach.
Right. And what kind of productions have you done so far? I know one of our favorite ones was Oedipus El Rey, which we talked about last season.
So good.
Yeah. There's a Luis Alfaro.
Yes, Luis Alfaro. He was the 3rd writer that we supported in partnership with the Public Theater. So we started with a play by Hilary Betis. It was a play called Alligator, and we did that in partnership with a company called New Georges. It's run by Susan Burnfield and Janie Saunders-Tiller, and it was amazing. It was amazing to be able to give Hilary her off-Broadway debut in partnership with a company that has committed to supporting women artists. Our second partnership was with Rattlestick, Playwrights Theater, and that was Martin Zimmerman's play 7 Spots on the Sun, which was pretty great. And what was really special about that also was the director. Her name was Waini Mengesha, who actually is based in Toronto. She's actually taking over Soul Pepper Theater Company, but she was able to make her New York debut with the show, and then Oedipus El Rey with Che Yu, and then we decided we wanted to expand our footprint outside of New York, and so we worked with Yale Rep, and we worked on a new show by Charisse Castro-Smith. It was her play El Huracán, and it was a kind of a loose...
I didn't know that was you.
Yes.
That's amazing.
So it was a kind of loose adaptation of The Tempest, And Charisse was actually one of the first writers that we approached when we had the idea for the Soul Project, you know, and she only had maybe 30 pages of the play. She said, I mean, I'm working on this kind of loose adaptation of The Tempest. It's a very personal play, and I would love to develop it with the Soul Project. So we worked on that play for a little over 2 years, and then was very fortunate to find a partner in Yale Rep. And then Lori Woolery, who is the director, is one of the founding members of the Soul Project. So it was great to just be able to you know, just arm that show with like so much love and support, just because we had been able to shepherd it from the beginning.
I just noticed that now when you brought up El Huracán as an adaptation of The Tempest, Oedipus El Rey was obviously an adaptation of Oedipus.
Right?
It's just interesting to me that you sort of Latinized these ancient sort of classic theater plays, like theater, canonical theater plays. No, I just thought it was an interesting little thing, especially like 2 in 1 season, you know?
Yeah. No, that is interesting. I mean, you know, the thing about Charisse, which is interesting, is that she actually studied as an actor. We met in graduate school. We went to graduate school together. And when she was in school studying acting, I was running it was called the Yale Cabaret, which is the student-run theater. It's kind of our playground, you know, where you can sort of work outside your discipline, which is cool. So like I was studying theater management, but it was the place where I could potentially act or direct or what have you. Cool. And so Charisse, she had written a play called Estrella, the Junkyard Queen. It was the first play that she had ever written, and she gave it to us when we were running the cabaret, and it was the 40th anniversary of the cabaret, and we had committed to doing mainly new work. So it was perfect. You know, she said, "Would you be willing to produce this?" And so, absolutely. So the fact that we, you know, worked on her first show together, and then to come back to Yale as, you know, 10 years later, it just felt like life was coming full circle. And then with Oedipus El Rey, you know, Luis I think he's one of our master writers. He's an amazing dramatist, and he's taken these classic Greek texts and adapted them so that they have a contemporary context. So he did Oedipus El Rey. He did another play. He did an adaptation of Electra called Electricidad, and then he did what's the one that I'm forgetting? I'm forgetting one of them. An adaptation of Medea. Called Mojada, which the public is actually going to produce next year.
That's right. Yeah. I did see that in the season. Right. Oh, sweet.
Together. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Who's directing that one?
Che will also direct that.
Look at that.
Che, great job with Oedipus.
Yeah. That was really wonderful.
Perhaps that the impetus behind this might be that perhaps theater hadn't been including many Latinx voices in the past. Maybe, just a thought.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. When I arrived in New York in 2013, I moved here to work at the Public Theater, and I actually saw pretty quickly that I was like, yo, where's our people? Where are my Latinx sisters and brothers, and why are their plays not being why are they not being produced at the larger off-Broadway, theaters?
Yeah.
And shout out though to the Latinx theaters that have been doing the work: Pregones, PRTT, Teatro Ayati, Repertorio Español. I mean, these are the companies that have been holding it down. Intar, thank you so much. Yes, absolutely. You know, Lou Moreno, absolutely. But one of the things that we did with my dear friends is we started to actually collect data. I don't know if this would be interesting for the viewers.
Sure.
Is we started to actually collect data where we approached the largest theaters in New York, and we said, listen, I think that we can do better in terms of who we're supporting on our stages. And so we looked at the programming from 2007 to 2017. We identified the 10 largest theaters, and we looked at who are the writers and the directors they actually are putting on their main stage. And as you can imagine, that the numbers told a very telling story, because it was primarily white. It wasn't particularly inclusive, but I think that was a way to activate, meaningful conversation around here are what the numbers are, because I think sometimes companies think that they maybe are a little more inclusive than the data shows.
Right.
Yeah, so but when faced with the actual results of what you've done, then you don't really have anywhere to hide.
That's right.
Excuse me, we crunched the numbers. Here are the receipts.
So that's been and I it was a pretty simple exercise that anyone can do. And I encourage folks to do that, that the numbers tell a story, and the more that we can do that, and as a way to hopefully activate meaningful conversation, I think the better.
So you have a very specific timeline for the Soul Project, which is pairing 12 playwrights with 12 companies. What was the significance of that?
So the initial impetus for the initiative was inspired by 13P, which was this collective of a constellation of mid-career playwrights who sort of self-organized and said, we're not gonna, we're sort of done with the readings and workshops, we actually want our work to be produced. And so they sort of took matters into their own hands, and they decided that once, that each of the 13 writers who organized, they were going to have their own plays produced, and then once all plays were done, that the initiative would sort of implode and they would be done. I thought that was such an innovative model.
Yeah.
So instead of doing 13, we decided we would do 12, and instead of self-producing, we would partner with different companies. The idea being that we want to kind of plant seeds with each of these companies and hope that even after they are done working with the Soul Project, that they will continue to support Latinx voices and artists of color kind of over the long term. And the focus is still very much on the off-Broadway community, but we want to have the most kind of impact and really create like systemic ripples really across the country. And so we felt like by doing that, we had to partner with companies outside of New York. That the idea being that we want to activate the country's most visible stages and give Latinx playwrights and artists of color those platforms to share their gifts and to share their artistry.
Got it. Because initially the mission was to just pair them with New York companies.
Yes,
right?
and then we decided.
Right.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
I didn't realize. Yeah, now that you say it, it makes so much more sense. I guess instead of becoming the Latin theater company, instead you're sort of injecting yourself into a larger American theater sphere.
Yes.
It's not like come to us for Latin. It's like we'll bring it to you.
Yes.
Which is
well, and actually, maybe I should maybe take that back. When we actually launched the initiative, there were partners outside of New York who were really, I think, inspired and supportive of the idea, like companies like Berkeley Rep in the Bay Area in California, Cara Mia Theater, which is a small Latinx company based in Dallas, Texas. So there were some of these companies that were so supportive and were on board who were not actually in New York.
Yeah, but that's great because Latinx is all over the country.
Yes.
It's in every state, so it makes sense that it's not just New York City. I think that's a fantastic idea because, bring the theater to the people.
Yes, we wanted the larger idea was we really wanted stages, from east to west, all across the country, to create synergies and for all of these stages and these stories to be in conversation with each other.
That's beautiful.
That's awesome.
Currently, the Soul Project is comprised of 6 other members.
Yes.
All theater artists. What is that dynamic like? Is it more of like an all hands on deck sort of thing, or does each person have a specific role they play in the company?
It's actually been like a little bit of both. I think, initially when we're just starting, it was like very much like, let's all come together. We have to sort of just, do what needs to get done. But we actually have started to slot into various roles. Someone sort of oversees marketing, someone helps to oversee kind of play development, script, and sort of literary process. But, we meet every week, and it's very much like, what needs to get done this week, what's coming down the pike. And then one of the key things that we do is that when we're in production, we actually assign one person from the group to be kind of the lead producer. And they work closely with me just to make sure that the Soul Project is fully represented in the rehearsal production process.
Right.
Now that you've created the Soul Project,
Yeah.
it's one thing to create something, but then to actually put it to action. What are some of the challenges that you found in running this company?
Oh, that is a great question. I think because it's a model that, at least to my knowledge, I don't know that it's a model that exists. It's a model that sort of is inspired by different systems.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it before.
But so I think we're honestly, we kind of are making it up as we go, and we stumble as we go. But fortunately, the community and our partners have been so supportive of us. And we, I think what I'm trying to remember is that when we mess up, that it's, that to not see them as failures, but as lessons that teach us new things in terms of actually how we want to make the work meaningful and how we want to make the partnerships meaningful. The thing that I often say to our partners is that if the only time you produce a play by a Latinx writer is when you're in partnership with the Soul Project, when we go away, and then if those writers don't continue to be nourished and fortified, then we won't have, then it feels like our partnership will have not, maybe has been as successful as we wanted it to be. So I can't point to like one specific thing, it's just like we're constantly evolving and learning and growing, as best we can.
Well, fail, I'm gonna put my teacher hat, first attempt in learning.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
when our students, and when they fail, it's just like, we failed. It's our first attempt in learning. Now we're going to try again. So that's good.
Exactly. Yes. A constellation of
practice
lessons.
makes progress.
Yes,
so,
yes.
No, that's great. That's great.
The thing that I'm also thinking about is I'm reading this great book, and I recommend it to everyone who's watching. It's a book called Emergent Strategy, and it's a book by Adrienne Marie Brown, and it's all about how we can use how we can sort of work in community to create liberation and justice for people of color. And it's very inspiring. It's really changed the way I think about my work. And she talks about this. She talks like never a failure, always a lesson. She always talks about that, which I find to be really inspiring. She also talks about how what is this constellation of people that have come together, what's the conversation that only this group of people can have? So when she leads a session where she brings artists together or community members together, there's never an agenda. Instead, she says, you're the agenda. What's the conversation that we can have together? And so that's also something that I'm trying to bring to our artistic partnerships with these different companies. Like, what's the magic that only we can create together that's going to be different than, say, the work that I do with New York Theater Workshop or the Public Theater, that every partnership is unique and magical and exciting in its own way.
In good news, it was announced that you are about to be the new artistic director for the Longworth Theater in Connecticut. So first of all, congratulations. That's a very welcome
Cheers
change.
to that. Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Hold on. Wait.
Yeah.
No, let's.
Cheers.
We'll drink for you. So one of the things that you said when you were taking on this role that we read about was that you would like to make it more diverse and inclusive. So Connecticut, how are you going to go about doing this?
Another great question. I think it's going to be, the work of creating a more inclusive American theater. I actually mentioned this the other day on another panel that I was on, that it's lifelong work, and that if we're waiting for utopia, like we're not actually going to, that'll sort of stop us in our tracks, that it's kind of incremental progress. So I don't expect it to be easy. I feel like I'm gonna try to, just continue to move the needle as best I can. The thing that I spoke about, with a lot of passion during the process during the search process, was that I'm really committed to nurturing and supporting and producing stories that are in conversation with the world and that reflect the community of New Haven. I think that, we're the architects of creating a more inclusive theater, and we have to just be super rigorous in terms of widening the circle, so that's what I hope to do. I hope to arm myself with people who really believe in that mission and who want to support that mission, and big props to the folks at Longworth, because I think that they are excited by that idea, and they're excited by the promise of what the stage can do, because the stage can change lives, right? We have to move people from here to the gut, right? From the mind to the heart to the gut, which is something that I can't take credit for that. I actually learned it from a training that I took recently with the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. They lead Undoing Racism workshops, and so I've been doing some grassroots organizing with some of my closest friends to really begin to activate, hopefully, meaningful, difficult conversations with artistic directors and cultural leaders, because we're all gatekeepers. We can all affect systemic change. And the facilitator talked about that, who led this training. She said, The work of actually creating a more just and liberated world is people moving from their head to their heart to their gut, and that we have to be critical lovers of our institutions. We have to be critical lovers of the things that we create. Like that you can love the thing that you made, and I think that for all of us who make up the American theater, we love our community. We love that we get to tell stories. And let's hold that joy, let's hold that excitement, but let's also hold the critique. How can we do better? How can we create a more just and liberated world? And having those two things sort of live side by side, I think, is the promise of the theater. It's the promise of our stages, that our stage can be a place to hold all our stories.
That's fantastic.
Wow. That was a lot.
I'm just gonna say, if this is the message that you're bringing to Longworth Theater, and then this is clearly the person they hired, then I think we gotta go to Connecticut sometime.
I think
road trip.
Yes,
Regarding goes to Connecticut. I'm down. I am
seriously.
so down for that.
Yeah, and especially since Regarding is, we started this talk show specifically to try and bring theater to an audience that normally doesn't see theater, just basically like an extra marketing tool to bring theater to, a more diverse, a more younger crowd.
Yes.
So it's just so exciting to have theater companies, especially in executive positions, where they can sort of reflect their audience.
No,
or at least the audience, hopefully, because our current audience is, let's be real, it's old and white.
Yes, yes. But. And I think even that, in terms of how we transform what our audiences look like in our theaters, is I think it's about inviting the people who are coming into the work of transforming our companies to say, your story and your life is going to be richer if you experience the story with someone who doesn't look and sound and live like you. That we have to make space for all kinds of different people to share in the magic and in the transformative power of being in the theater and taking in the story in the dark room. The other thing that I will say is that the work, like everything that I just said about like inclusion and that the stages have work to do, like I've been very blessed to work with lots of different folks who've inspired me and lots of mentors. I think mentorship is also a big part of this. So I just want to, just big shout out to, like Oscar Eustace and Bill Rausch and Stephanie Ibarra, David Roberts, Roberta Pereira. These are the people that, Daniela Topol, there's so many people who've inspired me and who I've learned from. So I just, credit where credit is due.
Can you tell us anything about things that we should look forward to from the Soul Project and or Longworth?
We love you. We want to see more.
I'm not gonna ask you what programming you're doing, obviously, but is there anything?
I would say definitely keep a lookout for. The Soul Project will hopefully have 2 shows coming up next year in partnership with 2 of our off-Broadway companies.
Great.
So I'm really excited about that. We're like actively having conversations about who's the writer, what is the play,
cool.
And that's so much of what makes the process pretty joyful, because we get to sort of do that work together with our partner companies. And then, with Longworth, my first season actually won't, I don't plan my first official season until 2021.
Got it.
But hopefully we'll be able to create some really exciting magic, and we'll get people from, certainly from the city, to come up to New Haven. And the other thing that I'm trying to figure out is what are the synergies that can exist between Longworth and the Soul Project? How can the work of Soul Project support Longworth, and how can the work of Longworth support the Soul Project? And I would love to just figure out what that relationship looks like, because it feels like there are synergies and there are things to
absolutely
right. Like we want to bring that work together as we just continue to create artistic homes for artists of color. Like that has to be, for me, that feels like such a animating value. It feels like the core pillar. It's the thing that I think I'm kind of dedicating my life's work to. And so.
Right. It's also New Haven, if I'm not mistaken. Connecticut is incredibly white. So
but New Haven is diverse.
Is actually very diverse.
Really?
Yeah, there's a very large and historic African American community there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And there's also there's a bit of an influence too, for sure, like Asian and Latinx, if I'm not mistaken.
Just a fun fact about New Haven is that the demographics of the city actually represent what the country looks like.
Oh, really?
So, is that right?
Yeah. They did a study. I believe, I don't know if it was the city did the study or or a nonprofit, but I remember receiving those demographics, and I was really struck by that it really is a place where we can celebrate difference and we can sort of bring people together.
Well,
that's amazing.
Well.
Yeah, and I love the idea of theater through this is a book analogy, but mirrors and windows.
Yeah.
You know, it's gonna mean so much to the people that are able to be mirrored in the work that you do, but also for everybody else, like windows into worlds that will enrich their lives.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's gonna be so much that you can bring to that.
Yeah.
Right. Also, you know, you don't have to be afraid, white people. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be afraid. It's just because they don't look like you doesn't mean you can't enjoy the stories. You know, I don't know. I don't know.
No, I think what you're speaking to is you know, let's actually kind of all go on a journey together.
Yes.
You know, that I don't have all the answers. You're not going to have all the answers. But if we can come together and go on a journey, then we'll find the answers.
That's exactly what I meant.
Right? And that I also think that when we talk about, you know, creating a more just and liberated world, that I think sometimes like people's, you know, sort of shoulders, you know, rise. Or even when you say the word racism or white supremacy, it's like we get immediately very uncomfortable. But it's like, let's actually have a different relationship with those words. Let's actually, again, if we can kind of lock arms and do the work together in community and actually find joy in the way in which this work can change lives, then, you know, sign me up. I feel like that's the work.
That's the theater I want to see. That's the world I want to see. That's the world I want to live in.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're coming to the tail end of our interview. So we're a talk show that recommends good theater to our audience. So we'd like you to recommend whatever you want to our audience. You can give it to the middle camera. You can give it to the roaming camera, that's the close-up. You know, if you want a more intimate shot, you know, whatever you want, just give it to the people.
I think I would just say that when you see the work of people of color being produced in New York and across the country, go and see the work. Because the other thing that we have to be thinking about is the economic impact. We have to show producers and our cultural leaders and our theaters that when you support people of color and you give them a platform and put them on your main stage, that we will come and we will support it. So I just, we are all gatekeepers. We all can affect change, and one of the biggest ways is to go and support the work. So please do that. Support the work of people of color with your pocketbook.
Yes, that was awesome.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Sure.
That
this
was
is great.
wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
This was awesome.